Sometimes the hardest conversations are the ones that need to happen the most. You can only ignore tension for so long before it starts affecting everything around it. And after giving it a lot of thought, I decided the best thing I could do was sit down with Mr. Anderson and have an honest conversation. No audience, no teams, no distractions, just the two of us. Now, I want to make something very clear. I didn't walk into that room looking for a confrontation. I wasn't there to challenge him. I wasn't there to establish dominance or prove a point. The truth is, I walked into that room hoping we could find some common ground. Because despite our differences, I still believed there was a path forward where we could work together effectively. At least that was my hope. The reality was that I had been carrying a growing frustration for weeks, not because we disagreed. Disagreement doesn't bother me. In fact, some of the best ideas come from people who see the world differently. What bothered me was the energy, the way he showed up, the tone, the attitude, the subtle aggression that seemed to accompany every interaction. And if we were going to continue building projects together, it needed to be addressed. So when he finally sat across from me, I remained calm, professional, measured. I carefully explained what I had been observing. I talked about the tension that had been developing during our meetings. I talked about how collaboration becomes difficult when people feel dismissed before they've even had a chance to finish their thoughts. And then I mentioned something that had been sitting in the back of my mind, his team. Because from where I was sitting, they didn't seem comfortable. There were moments when they looked like they wanted to speak but chose not to. Moments when they appeared to hold back opinions instead of sharing them openly. And that concerned me because creativity thrives when people feel safe enough to contribute. For a moment, he listened, really listened. At least it appeared that way. And I remember thinking to myself, maybe we're finally getting somewhere. Maybe he understood what I was trying to communicate. Maybe this conversation would become a turning point. But then the conversation shifted. He began explaining that he and I simply viewed art differently. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. We do view art differently. So I stopped him, not out of frustration, but because I wanted him to hear something important. I said, that's not the problem. The fact that we see differently is actually a strength. That's why collaboration exists. If everyone sees the same thing, then everyone produces the same thing. Different perspectives create depth. Different experiences create innovation. Different viewpoints create something neither person could have created alone. But while our artistic differences didn't concern me, the way we communicated those differences did. And that's where the real problem lived. As the conversation continued, he leaned back in his chair, arms relaxed, face serious, confident, almost too confident. And while I couldn't hear the thoughts running through his mind, there was something in his expression that spoke volumes. It was the look of someone who believed they already knew the answers, someone who felt their approach was the right approach, someone who wasn't entirely convinced by what had been presented so far. And maybe that's fair. Maybe he truly believed there was a better way. But leadership isn't about proving you're right. Collaboration isn't about winning. And creative partnerships definitely aren't about keeping score. So I looked him, directly at him, and said something I felt he needed to hear. Mr. Anderson, I'm not your competition. I'm not trying to defeat you. I'm not trying to undermine your ideas. I'm trying to work with you. Because whether we like it or not, our teams are going to cross paths. Our projects are going to intersect. And if we spend our time protecting our egos instead of building trust, we're going to fail before we even get started. The room became quiet. And in that moment, I realized something. This conversation was never really about art. It was about respect. It was about communication. It was about two people learning whether they could put their pride aside long enough to create something bigger than themselves. And sometimes that's the most challenging collaboration of all.